Dallas Mavericks might still be feeling the effects of Nico Harrison's Luka trade, but there is hope at least for this upcoming season. The Mavs looked good last year at times, but with Kyrie having no timeline for his return, NBA 2K17 will be leading the line at the 1. He's still loading. Cooper Flagg is the big talking point, and it looks like he's going to be given the keys to run the offense, based on the reports in preseason. AD and Lively will be a good duo in the front court, and PJ Washington and Gafford are also reliable options for when AD inevitably gets injured. Dante Exum, Max Christie, Jaden Hardy are all relatively decent names, but in the wild, wild west, the Mavericks probably need a little more time and a little more talent to make the jump to contend. The Denver Nuggets still have the best player in the NBA, and even though they had a disappointing year last year, when you have Jokic, you always have a shot. The front office did make some solid moves too. Cam Johnson is one of my favorite 3-and-D wings in the league, and bringing back Bruce Brown along with trading for Valanciunas means that the Nuggets have better depth this season. Tim Hardaway is also not the worst option off the bench, and along with Julian Strawther, Peyton Watson and Zeke Naji, the Nuggets should be back near the top of the West and looking to make a deep run in the playoffs this year. The Golden State Warriors may be the team that I am finding the hardest to predict. They won at a 63 win rate after Butler was added to the lineup last season, winning 77% of their games. And this year they are retaining GP2 and Kuminga whilst adding Seth Curry and DeAnthony Melton, two good perimeter weapons. The addition of Al Horford, however, only exacerbates what I already want to refer to as the unction. With 39-year-old Big Al topping the list in team age, Curry is 36, Butler 35, and Draymond 34. They played at an elite level, showing their potential in their victory over Houston last season. However, with another year on the clock for all, I hesitate to label them as contenders. And despite what journalists and some writers would have you believe, with Pods, Moody, and Hield on the roster, there is no doubt that the Warriors are a playoff team. But with the strength of the conference and the unpredictable nature of Father Time, it also wouldn't surprise me if they were in the play-in at the end of the season. With Looney gone, a lot of their rebounding prowess won't be as strong as last season, and so the Warriors will be, for sure, must watch, whether that's for good or for bad reasons. The boys in Houston finally got rid of the biggest, the largest paperweight, Jalen Green, adding some real offensive firepower with the Grim Reaper, KD. They also bolstered the roster with the additions of Okogie, Dorian Finney-Smith, and Clint Capella. With Fred VanVleet going down though, it seems that a lot more is going to be asked of Reed Shepherd as a point guard. With Dylan Brooks and Cam Whitmore also on their way out, the Rockets will rely a lot more heavily on the offense of Durant as their primary shooter. I do think many are being overly dismissive of the playmaking capacity of Şengün and of Amen Thompson, and Jabari Smith and Tari Eason are two high-level wings in today's league. The double big lineup of Şengün and Adams will also still be effective when the time comes. So even though Fred is down, it may end up being a blessing in disguise, and I still expect the Rockets to at least challenge anyone not named OKC this season. After Pablo Torre dropped an absolute bombshell on Steve Ballmer and Kawhi Leonard, the LA Clippers' somewhat potentially promising season looks far gloomier. Chris Paul and James Harden are reunited as teammates once again, and by trading for John Collins, signing Brook Lopez, and adding Bradley Beal, the Clippers have truly added a solid backup in every position. It is hard to ignore all of the off-season shenanigans though. It seems only a matter of time before Kawhi is punished for not actually saving the environment or planting any trees. Zubac had a great year last year, and Harden still has the ability to be a premier player. And with Chris Dunn, Derek Jones, and why the heck Batum still on the bench too, the Clippers should have enough to be in the playoffs, albeit maybe at a lower seed. With LeBron's second decision being Henny rather than announcing retirement, it seems like the LA Lakers won't be gearing up for his farewell tour just yet. Bringing in Ayton means there's finally somewhat of a presence at the 5, even if it's not Ayton's personal preferred role. Marcus Smart is also a smart acquisition to accompany Connect 4 and Gabe Vincent on the bench. Luka will be the key to any success this season. He needs to have as big an impact as any if they have any chance of sniffing success. Reeves should remain solid, and Hachimura plus Vanderbilt is a good pair on the wing, but the Lakers still feel more empty than deep. I certainly don't consider them as challengers, and there is a world in which they miss the playoffs altogether. They are extremely top heavy, and barring an MVP level showing from Doncic, it might get a little more ugly than they'd have hoped. The Memphis Grizzlies let go of Bane and brought in KCP, in a move that seems like they're almost ready to accept that this isn't the timeline that they can compete in. Ja Morant is still one of the most electrifying players in the league, and Triple J is still pretty much a lock at the 4. Jalen Wells may get the start at the 3, a positions that the Grizzlies don't have too much depth in. The rest of their rotation with players like Jacques Landale, Vince Williams, G.G. Jackson and Scottie Pippen Jr. and Concha don't fill me with too much hope of them making any real noise. I think they'll be on the edge of the play-in or out of contention entirely, which is the far more likely option. The offseason was a cold one for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Aside from Naz Reid getting a new 5-year deal, they didn't seem to really do too much in terms of activity. Back-to-back years in the conference finals still hasn't done enough to solidify themselves as a threat in the eyes of many. But I do believe the Wolves are a much better team than I'm seeing from a lot of their projections. Mike Conley is still a solid defensive guard to pair up with Ant-Man in the backcourt, and with Rob Dillingham off the bench, the guard play is in very good hands. Even DiVincenzo is an option to be called upon from the bench. The frontcourt rotation is also very strong. The Rockets got KD, but they got Jaden McDaniels, and Randall really looked like he could once again touch the all-star level of play that we saw from him a couple years back. Gobert is still an elite rim protector, no matter how much his perimeter defense wanes in comparison. Even with Nikhil going to ATL, bigger roles for Dillingham and Dante mean I still have the T-Wolves towards the top of the conference. Maybe an outside pick to challenge. It exemplifies the strength of the West that in an off-season where they acquired Poole, Looney and Sadiq Bey, the New Orleans Pelicans aren't being considered as even playoff locks by a few. Bruce Brown and McCollum made their way out of Louisiana, but the additions I mentioned before mean they are blessed with talent. Their issue, of course, has been the injury bug, but they shipped Ingram, and even though DeJounte Murray's injury will keep him out for a large part of the season, the Pelicans still boast Poole, Alvarado, and rookie Jeremiah Fears, who looks like he could be a problem in the league very soon. It's easy to forget the Pelicans have one of the strongest wing rotations in the entire NBA. Trey Murphy, Herb Jones, Sadiq Bey, and Jordan Hawkins is a great set of versatile players who can play the 2 to the 4 comfortably. Barring what seems like a predictable injury to Zion, the Pelicans may surprise a few, maybe sneaking to the play-in or even higher by the time the season comes to a close. The reigning NBA champions look to be the first team in over 7 years to successfully retain their championship. They signed their whole core down to huge deals, and with them being the youngest NBA winning team in nearly 50 years, there is no doubt that barring the unexpected, we should be hearing them at the top of the conference for years to come. Reigning double MVP Shea still has even more upside and aura, and with J-Dub, Chet, and J-Will also signing rookie extensions, the Thunder look pretty secure in leading the charge this season. The craziest thing they have going for them is that they still have an absurd number of draft picks that they own. Like even in 2026 alone, they have 3 first-round picks. It's the same in 2027, along with a couple extra second round to go with it. OKC are truly set to become the greatest juggernaut we've seen since the 2010s Warriors, and nobody can have any complaints. The Phoenix Suns had perhaps the most intriguing offseason in the West. Trading KD netted them Jalen Green and Dylan Brooks in return, and with Beal, Booker, and Green being a trio that would never have seen any success, they bought out and stretched Bradley Beal's contract to accommodate the incoming Green. At this point, I think it's fair to say that Devin Booker is being wasted in Phoenix, a superstar level player who seems to have not a care in the world about competing for a chip. After losing Ty Washington, Tyus Jones, and Mason Plumlee, and waiving Cody Martin, the Suns truly have blown up what was a horrid experiment of Booker, Beal, and KD. Mark Williams comes in from Charlotte in a move that will have Nick Richards wondering what he has to do to escape his shadow. I like Kobe Brayer's game as a guard, but I think he'll struggle behind Colin Gillespie and Grayson Allen for bench minutes. Milo Wack could be a solid center in the future, but for now at least, the Suns are one of the teams we can at least comfortably declare aren't in contention for the postseason. In a similar position are the Portland TRAILBLAZERS. After bringing in Drew Holiday from the Celtics and welcoming back Damian Lillard, 2026 will be an interesting year, when Lillard is back. But this year shapes up to be a run-of-the-mill average season. Shaedon Sharpe should get some real time to shine, and there is a chance that we see some serious progress from some of the younger faces on the roster. Klingon, Kamara, Rupert, and Yang Hansen. Jeremy Grant always puts up solid numbers, but it remains to be seen what the next few seasons will hold for the Blazers, in what is an absolutely stacked Western Conference. Bringing in Dennis Schroeder should help the Sacramento Kings push for playing relevance this year. In Levine, DeRozan, and Sabonis, they have somewhat of a medium three, if not a big one. The trio all averaged around 20 points last season, and with Schroeder and Keon Ellis in the backcourt, with Malik Monk and Westbrook bolstering them off the bench, they do actually have a pretty good 5 to 6 man rotation. The issue is, that's where it ends. The rest of their roster is remarkably unremarkable. Outside of who'll be on the floor to begin games and perhaps the addition of Westbrook, the roster is pretty empty. Doug McDermott and Drew Eubanks, along with Saric and Nick Clifford, aren't the kind of names that will be easily called upon down the stretch. And given the fact that there are 3 better teams than Sacramento in their state alone, it shapes up to be a difficult year for the Kings. Greg Popovich finally stepped down as head coach at the end of last season, and thus the San Antonio Spurs entered the season with a coach whose initials aren't GP for the first time in almost 30 years. Instead, it will be MJ taking over, and that's Mitch Johnson, not Michael Jordan. With Wemby back after what sounded like a scary injury, and his off-season training with literally anyone, the Spurs are finally on the way up. Managing to bring in Fox without having to give up Castle was a real chess move from the front office. Devin Vassell and Keldon Johnson are 2 solid players on the wing, and Harrison Barnes brings actual championship level experience to the roster. With players like Sohan, McLaughlin, and Dylan Harper off the bench, the Spurs will likely be a serious force within a few years, and Wemby looks to be a perennial DPOY candidate. I expect the Spurs to be in the group of teams near the play-in, but I do suspect they could still be one of the teams that just miss out. Last, both alphabetically and in position, the Utah Jazz will go through another season of rebuilding this year. Jordan Clarkson got bought out, and John Collins and Colin Sexton traded. And with the additions of Kevin Love, Slow-Mo, and Nurkic, it's clear that the Jazz have no intention of doing much this season. Ace Bailey will have the freedom to grow as a prospect, and Lauri Markkanen is still a player that has serious upside. Walker Kessler is also a solid NBA 5, and with players like Walter Clayton, Filipowski, and Keontae George also on the roster, the Jazz do have a couple of players to watch over the next few years. They're definitely going to be one of my league pass teams this year. I think there's a chance that they have a lot of fun games this season. And that's the Western Conference. I'm going to put the league standings up right now. Let me know what you think. I think the West is actually really crazy this year. A lot of these teams, like, we're talking 2nd to 7th, could be between 52 and 48 wins. Like, it's nuts. But let me know what you think. Comment, like, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff. You know how we do, man. Thank you for the support. This year, hopefully, there'll be more videos. Love. Thank you for watching. Peace.